Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to Versus Stars podcast. All my loyal listeners, thank you for continued support. And remember, click the subscribe button, everybody. It's an amazing episode because Kenny Porter returns to the mothership. We talk Superboy, Man of Tomorrow, and The Schlub. Come aboard as we go traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Porter. Thanks so much for coming to Versus Stars podcast.
Thanks so much for having me back.
It's totally my pleasure. It was a great pleasure to talk with you the last time, so thank you so much for coming back. That's always a pleasure of mine.
Hey man, anytime I get to talk comics, I'll take time out of my day. Pleasure.
Comics really are the best thing to talk about, right? There's always so much you can say. There's so many different comic books to talk about. And when you talk about to a writer, they always seem to be steeped in comic book knowledge.
I mean, I try to keep myself up on stuff. I'm a huge reader, so I read as much as I can. I read everything I can. I reread stuff that I love. I just kind of announced on Twitter today, I've decided to take on the Herculean task of reading every single issue of Spawn. Because I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna do it because it was one of my favorite books as a kid, and I lost all the issues I had because my mom went through kind of like a Bible thumping phase, and then decided anything even remotely related to hell or the devil has to go. And I was like, well, he fights the devil. And she's like, but the devil's in it, so it's out of here.
No.
So she threw them all away. So I'm going to start from issue 1 and go all the way up through it, just as like a fun sort of reading exercise. I will say I have read all of One Piece, so I figured this isn't going to be as hard to get through it or take as much time, considering that was 1,100 plus chapters. So I think that 300 some plus issues, I think I got it in the bag, but it'll be fun to go back through there.
You know, I don't think there's been a character who has had such a revival than Spawn, because Spawn was huge for a while in the 90s, and it kind of drifted away a little bit where sales started plummeting and people weren't talking about Spawn. Then right around issue 290 something or other, when it started approaching 300, suddenly everyone was loving Spawn again, including myself, who bought Spawn around 298 again, started buying Spawn again. And it seems like he's now had a renaissance.
Yeah, which is awesome because he has been and always will be a huge pillar in Image Comics. And Todd McFarlane's always been a big perpetuator of creators' rights and stuff. So the fact that he's back in public knowledge and stuff, and that people are excited about, there was that Kickstarter with the huge thing for the action figure, which I got, which is awesome because I had the original one when I was a kid too. So I'm just buying back my childhood piece by piece. I got the figure. I'm going to read all the books again. It's going to be great.
You know, I must admit, I'm doing the same damn thing. I'm slowly buying all the action figures that I had as a kid, and I'm getting them back. The old Star Wars figures, I'm starting to buy up a little bit. He-Man, I'm almost completed the He-Man collection that I had when I was a kid. I'm one one toy short, King Randolph or somehow. And then eventually also I'm buying the Marvel. I just bought the Punisher and Carnage from the Toy Biz Marvel toys from the 90s.
Oh, awesome. That's sweet.
It is unfortunately how quickly money goes away when you're a nerd.
Yeah, it's just well, that's an expense I'm just going to have to take the bullet on, that I'm going to have to drop so much money on a piece of plastic, but it means something to me. So
it is amazing how I think attached people do get to comic books and characters and toys when we were young. So I mean, for you, it was Spawn. What else was something that you were attached to when you were a kid that you still kind of had that love for?
Oh yeah, Spider-Man was huge. Especially I'd already loved Spider-Man, and then the animated series came out, so they put out better quality toys. So as any opportunity I could, I got the figures from Spider-Man the animated series. Same with Batman the animated series. I'd always loved the Keaton Batman, so when the cartoon came out, I tried to buy as much of that stuff as possible. And then although I didn't get to read many of the Ninja Turtles comics. Obviously, Turtles was a huge thing for me as well. But I just didn't have as many of the comics just because they were a little bit harder to get for me. And I don't think my shop had a ton of them. The one that didn't live, the one that was around the corner from where I lived. I just don't remember them having a lot of Turtles comics.
Now, if I remember correctly, last time you were on, we talked The Flash, which was the prequel to the Flash movie. We had Michael Keaton. So this kind of brings the whole conversation full circle, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of funny.
So what do we think about that? Seeing with the nostalgia factor of the Flash movie with Keaton, what do we think how that played out?
I mean, I think it's always great to give somebody who has a legacy role a chance to come back and tackle the character and stuff again. The fact that he was super excited about it, I think just added to it. I love Michael Keaton. I love him in Jackie Brown. Like I love him in Out of Sight. Like I love him, Mr. Mom. Like basically, I'll take Michael Keaton anywhere. Beetlejuice, Batman, it doesn't matter. Like I'll take him. I'll take him any which way but loose. So anything Michael Keaton wants to be in, I'll support. I love Birdman too. That was a great
Oh,
movie.
that was absolutely great, and I really do hope. What I was hoping for a while is that they were getting to the Sinister Six with the Sony movies with him as the Vulture, and I hope they still continue with it. But obviously, with the writer's strike, I mean the actor strike, we could be looking at years before that gets around to happening.
Yeah, it could be. Let's just hope that they solve it and stuff quickly and they get what's owed to them and stuff. And yeah, I mean, never rule it out. So, I mean, it seems like he's jumping and doing a lot of things again now. I think it was him. He said that, and don't quote me on this because I'm not completely sure, but I think he said he was one of those guys who like took a lot of time off to like be with his family a bit more
Mm.
and stuff. And like now he's like getting back into it and like, I'm all for it, man. I'll slap down money day one for a ticket for anything he wants to do.
He's like Spawn. He had that big thing in the early '90s, then he disappeared for a
Yeah.
little while. Now he's all the way. Now he's back
He's
again.
back, baby. It's Keaton number 300. We're here for it.
So to go a little bit about comic books, so you're now the writer of Superboy, Man of Tomorrow. So how do you get involved with the series?
So that was a pitch that I'd originally come up with. So a few years ago, Brian Michael Bendis brought Connor back. He'd been gone for a while. He'd seemingly died and then was out of continuity. And you know, the DC universe had been rebooted a couple of times. And at this point in DC lore, like they know that the universe has been tampered with a few times. And when they brought Connor back and he was brought back into the universe, it was a universe that was rewritten without him because he was outside of reality. So that to me, when I read that, I was like, oh my God, that's like, talk about feeling like an outsider before. Now, like you come back and you're literally, you can't return to the reality in which you were a part of it. So when I read that, I was like, man, there'd be a really great story there. And then I noticed like, as the run went on, Connor kind of got like benched. And after
Mm.
Bendis left, they weren't doing anything with him. So I came up with this pitch. It was like my editor Andrew Marino was like, "Hey, if you could do anything at DC, what's something you would want to do?" And one of the ideas I threw at him was like, "I would really love to do a Connor Kent story because I think it's awesome that he brought him back. People love the character, whether it's from the comics, from the Young Justice stuff, or the Jeff Johns like Adventure Comics run, or just the Young Justice cartoon show. Like people love this character. We should bring him back." And he was all on board for it and then asked me, would you be okay if I submitted this to the round robin tournament as a possibility of something to get made? And I thought that that was an awesome idea. He paired me up with Janoy Lindsay, the artist that I'm working with on the series, who I'd never met before, but his style was perfect for it. He captures all the energy and emotion that I wanted to put into the book. And really, like going into it, I wanted to pitch it as I wanted it to be a big, bombastic, and emotional action comic. Like I wanted it to feel like a battle manga, like Dragon
Mm.
Ball. Like I wanted to throw him out into space and like put him up against villains that were as strong as him, if not stronger, or just with weird enough powers that he wasn't able to just best them the way that they would do on Earth. And so Joy was all about that. And we entered into the tournament and it won. Like it
Mm.
beat out all the competition and ended up winning by a ton of votes. And I really appreciate everybody who showed up and voted for Connor and for our book and the vision that we had. So the basic premise of the book is that Connor Kent, who's now back in reality, in our reality, uh, is feeling a bit left out because there's a lot of people flying around Metropolis right now with an S on their chest, and there's not a lot of room for him to make a difference.
Mm.
So, seeing that he's feeling like an outsider again, and there's no place on Earth for him to make a difference, he gets proactive and decides, well, if there's no one on Earth that needs help, that needs a Superman, what about out in space? And so he tracks the distress signal and steals a very temporal and not great working teleportation bracelet from the Kryptonian vaults and weapons museum in the Fortress of Solitude and takes off to go find trouble and to try to just do good deeds and find his new place in the universe. And that, of course, does not go his way when he gets out there. So that's the basic premise of the book. I introduced a bunch of new characters in it. There's a new team that he meets that are sort of like an analog to the Elite called the Cosmeteers, which are kind of a space team of young teenage heroes similar to him were genetic experiments. They're all from different alien races that you've seen in the DC universe before, but they've been modified so that they either have super speed or are a technomancer or are a pyromancer mixed with some of the base powers that their original species have. Because the Dominators were trying to make, the perfect blend of soldiers inspired by the heroes on Earth, who are all metahumans who develop different abilities. So there's a lot of different layers of like DC history. I'm a huge fan of like DC lore and the different alien races and stuff. So there was a lot of reference in everything that Janoy and I went through of like, oh, we can pull in this sort of thing and pull in this and deal with this with the Dominators and stuff. So it's been a lot of fun to be able to carve out and play with a big section of the DC universe on a lot of the toys that I haven't gotten to touch before.
Well, like I said, one of the characters that doesn't show up in Superboy, A Man of Tomorrow, is a Green Lantern. Not one of the Earth Green Lanterns, but one of the Green Lanterns. So obviously, I guess we can say spoil what happens to him. I mean, it's been out.
Yeah, that was issue
4,
and that's already been out for a bit. So yeah, so if you don't want to know, pause it right now. But if you do want to know, it's been out for a bit, I say go ahead and go for it.
So we're gonna do a pause for spoilers. Okay, we're good. So obviously the Green Lantern, for those who have read it, he's killed. He's killed by the villain. To us, the villain Trav. And he goes out to find another ring bearer. So does that indicate that maybe Green Lanterns are going to also play a bigger role in the series moving forward, or whoever is the new ring bearer?
I can't say because it's a spoiler, but it was my intention when I was thinking of it and building it out. A lot of times when I approach stuff in the bigger superhero universe stuff, I always think of like, if this is happening and it's in continuity, what's the if this happens, therefore this happens sort of thing. And the whole time I was thinking about it, I was like, well, if they're turning in smugglers and criminals and everything at a cosmic level, like the people that Connor's going to think of to call to turn them in are Green Lanterns. And in 3, there's a montage where it shows that every time they've apprehended or stopped people who are buying Dominator X, who's the purple Dominator who's running this whole grift, much to the chagrin of the other Dominators who don't want him to do it, he's calling the Green Lantern Corps, which at the time that this takes place, I believe haven't been a part of the United Planets. But by the time it ends, I think it is. The timeline, we're working that out. The timeline's a little fuzzy on that. But he's still able to whether or not they're part of the Universal like Society of Planets and the force there, he's able to contact them directly because that's who he would figure were the space police to call to turn them in. So I always knew writing it, I was like, all right, there is going to be a moment where a Green Lantern is going to intercept once the bad guys like make their turn, because I knew that the big turn was going to happen off camera and someone else was going to have to confront. So not only in this scene is Connor going to have to confront the people he thought were his friends, but the law that he's been working with shows up and is also like, yes, it's undeniable your friends have committed an atrocity and I'm here to arrest them. So I always knew that Green Lanterns were going to play a part of that. Luckily, the folks at DC were completely cool with me doing that, which is awesome. And I'm a huge Green Lantern fan on top of being a huge Superman fan. So the fact that I got to add in some Green Lantern stuff is always a great draw. So is there going to be more Green Lantern stuff in it? You have to see. I can say there's a definite strong maybe there's some more Green Lantern stuff coming up.
Well, the thing about the Green Lantern, especially within current continuity with Green Lantern, is that, for instance, like Hal Jordan was kind of kicked out of Green Lantern because he wasn't going to play ball with them. With the planetary unit, I believe is what they're called. They're very stringent about what they think the police should be and the Green Lantern should be. And if there are space cops, we know like things like Batman in our Earth, it's viewed as vigilantism, and they're not exactly on his side. So how do Green Lanterns feel about Superboy putting out justice, or what he thinks is justice in what would be their turf?
In my mind, I mean, he's cooperating with them in my mind, of like he's capturing them, and plus they know Superman's reputation. So anyone like wearing that symbol, I just imagine that like the greater Green Lantern Corps is like, if this guy's with Superman, he's on the level. So if he's saying there's criminals somewhere, we need to go pick them up, I'm sure that whatever he's saying, that ass buys you a lot of a lot of leeway when it comes to the Green Lantern Corps. So that's how I always pictured it. Of like, if Connor Kent, who I presume they would know because the other Lanterns know him and stuff, and there's been all the big epic battles and everything. Like, if Superboy is telling you there's bad guys somewhere, there's probably bad guys somewhere, and we should go and take care of it. So I see it more of them realizing, like, yeah, Superman and the rest of the Superman family and the House of L and stuff have always been like an ally to the core. If he's calling something in, like, we're showing up. Like, so I've always pictured it as like they know Superman is like the world's greatest hero on Earth. They're gonna side with the House of L when it comes to stuff like that. And Connor's not being spooky about it like Batman would be. So he's being cooperative and calling them and everything instead of taking stuff into his own hands like Batman would do if he were on a universal tear.
Well, what interesting about the series is the title. So Trav references that Connor has not grown up. That we know the title is Superboy, Man of Tomorrow, which is an interesting contrast between the boy aspect of Superman and the Man of Tomorrow part of it. So how intentional is that contrast in the direction of the series going forward?
Very intentional. I think next issue is the one where we really hit home the thematic meaning of the title, especially with like all the fallout that's happened in 4 and Connor making all these mistakes. He's still Superboy, but he needs to start thinking about like, who am I going to be? Like, what is my legacy going to be as I grow up? So because a lot of like throughout his history as a character, he's kind of been in Arrested Development where no matter what he's done, like he has the title of Superboy, but that doesn't mean he can't start thinking about what kind of man he's going to be. So it's always been very intentional from the beginning that I picked that title, that it has something to do with Superman, the legacy of Superman, and also has something very specifically to do with Connor right now.
Now, the one thing with Connor in prior continuity is the aging issue. Bring it up that he doesn't necessarily age the way he would, or that he's also kind of became a sort of like a teenager from creation, a quick age to a teenager. So 2 questions would be: is there like is a future where he is an adult male, an adult Superman? And 2, according to the story, how long has he been alive in our opinion of continuity?
I know it's always a sliding scale sort of thing. I think the way it's depicted, he's early 20s right now. And being outside of reality and reality being rewritten and stuff, that messes stuff up. But I believe he's supposed to be early 20s right now. And as far as like who takes the mantle when they get older and stuff, I mean, I'd love to write a story about what he does, like when he becomes like fully an adult, and like what he ends up doing and stuff, or like what kind of name he takes. In my mind, I don't know. In my mind, I don't know that he ends up calling himself Superman. Or if he does, he ends up doing something more like going and taking the name and making something more of it in other places, as opposed to like not being the Superman of Earth. Maybe if we were to expand it, like take my story over, kind of like at the time when both Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne were Batman, and like Dick Grayson was the Batman of Gotham, and Bruce Wayne was like the Batman of the Justice League at the time to cover more ground. So I think it'd be really interesting to do that if he and John at one point in a future thing were to share the title and be of Superman and be like, I'm gonna cover space for a while, you cover Earth, sort of thing, just like to spread it around, to have it be more, to like grow the symbol and the legacy even more, that even more of them might share the name or the title of Superman. I think would be a super interesting, I mean, I guess pun intended, I didn't mean to say super interesting, would be an interesting play on them, especially being sort of like adopted brothers, especially because I know like Phillip Kennedy Johnson is doing his awesome run on Action right now, and Josh is doing his run on Superman, Josh Williamson. So I don't know how much that's going to come up. I know, like, I've talked to Phillip Kennedy Johnson about where Connor ends, which matches up perfectly with what's going on, because this whole Connor story takes place before, I think it's Action Comics 1051. So it's before he gets the new jacket that they all have like the new matching jackets in Metropolis. So a lot of, and I've read Philip's issues and they're amazing. And a lot of it emotionally syncs up with where I end up leaving Connor by the end of it. Um, so I think that there's a lot of room for him to grow, especially as like a mentor figure and a really cool figure. I really love that he's spending so much time with Keenan and I think is it Keenan or Kanan? I've never heard anybody else say it out loud. Only I've said it, but the Superman of China,
Mm.
who's on the team. I think there was like a really beautiful moment where they're like playing video games and he beats him. He's like, I thought you said you never played this before. So like the fact of them kind of like becoming closer is really cool and stuff. So I'm just always about like, let's expand it, not break it. So I like expanding more on them, like going out and like furthering the legacy and stuff is really interesting to me. So I could always see it. I could always see it going more that way. Um, and like I said, age, like I'm kind of the Grant Morrison school. Like they're about whatever age. I'd say he's probably about early 20s based on how much he's shaved before our series, but he's like definitely a bit scruffier later on. So like he can get a good 5 o'clock shadow going in a beard if he wanted to. So he's definitely probably like early 20s.
Well, as you said, he's early 20s. How long has he actually been in existence for, though?
I don't know. With the universe rewriting and everything, it's difficult to say. And because of the sliding time scale
Mm.
of like, technically, if the stuff happened in the 90s, he should be 45 or
Right.
something. Because, yeah. So I never really worry or think about stuff like that. I just think of it in terms of like sliding time scale of like their adventures took place a few years ago or whatever. And stuff's been rewritten and like, which they get into like Doomsday Clock and stuff all the time about how like time is fluid with them and the universe recorrects it and stuff in order to make it keep going. So not too sure how long exactly, but he's had all the relationships that he's had, and so that was a big part of launching it too. Was in that first issue when I picked it up, they ended up doing a Young Justice series beforehand where he had an adventure with Tim and Cassie and Bart. So there was some friction there and stuff I was able to play off as well of him also feeling like, oh man, like I really am out of place here. So that was fun to play on too. So it's good to know that all that stuff's there and that we can build on it and stuff going forward. But I can't tell you, man, how many how many years it's been.
One interesting part in issue 4 as well. Is Kalex? Am I saying the name right? Kalex, the
Kelex,
Kalex. Sorry, Kalex. So
yeah.
Kalex asked Superman, why did he? Would it take 2 weeks for him or Superman to notice that Kal-El was missing? What is
Oh yeah,
this?
that struck a lot of people when I put that in. Was because also like Clark has been by the time this story takes place, he's done the War World stuff.
Yeah,
He's like rescued those kids in that other. They're not Kryptonian. I forget the name of the race, but the race of people he found on War World that were very close to
is it
Kryptonian, and he's
Daxamites?
no, they're different than that. Because Trav's a Daxamite,
Right.
but they have a different name. It's similar to where like based on solar placing, like they have similar physiology. I think they'd technically be stronger than Daxamites because Daxamites are like 50% Superman kind of
Mm.
like level of power, if I remember correctly. And if I don't, sorry, but I think it is. But they're a different species. So he's been doing that, and then like he's been trying to spend more time with John and everything. So like with everything going on in his own adventures, like yes, it just drives home more that like it feels like Connor didn't have a place before stuff, and that it was easy for people to forget about him. And it's also kind of a meta thing about how like Connor got benched after he got brought back. So it was just like, where is he? Like after we made a big deal about him coming back and going to live on the farm. So I thought it was a good tender moment, and it shows just like how much like you can throw a train at Superman, you can bombard him with a whole army, but when he realizes like something like that's happened, that's when it really hits him. Like that's when
Mm.
it really hits Clark in the feels. And I wanted to have that moment wasn't meant to be malicious. It was meant to be like a really big emotional, like, oh my God, you're right. Like it took me this long to notice because I've been so busy with everything else since Connor's been back and back in our lives. That was a really important scene for me to have in there emotionally for both Clark and for Connor.
Now, what's been played up a lot with Connor and Superman is the idea of what is Connor to Superman. I mean, obviously he's a clone, but clone. I mean, I think in the Titans show they kind of suggest that he's kind of like a son. I think they did something similar in the Young Justice cartoon, things of that nature. But in this case, he not only is a clone, so not directly, but he's been wiped from memory and history. I mean, that's like so many areas removed from what Superman and his real son John Kent is like. So how does Superman view Connor Kent now?
To me, I mean, I don't know how much it's been said out loud, but to me, I think they have more of a brotherly relationship. I mean, from a mentor point of view, he could almost be like a son. But now with John in the picture, it feels a little bit more like he'd be kind of more like a brother, like an estranged little brother. So I know I lean heavily into that relationship of him being like a little brother to him and everything. And so I feel like that, and it's a weird situation. Not all of us have half clones of us running around. So I can see at moments when he feels like he could be a father to him or he could be more of a brother. I think if I were to guess, as they grow older, it will become more of a brotherly sort of situation. But until he's fully matured, there will always be that kind of like, you're kind of like my brother, you're kind of like my son,
Yeah.
sort of thing until they figure it out. I think once they're both emotionally completely comfortable with where the relationship sits, I think they'll be more like brothers. But it can be, I think, depending on the story or what's happening, it can be a weird kind of shift for a bit. Because, like, again, that there ain't no precedent for us having that in real life of us having a half clone of us with our biggest enemy.
Well, one interesting line you also have in that same issue is that Trav states that Superboy was dead inside a long time ago. So what does Trav think this about Superboy, and how close to the mark is he?
So Trav thinks that Superboy is just like a husk and is all bravado. And like he sees him as like wasting the powers that he has because I think, at this point we've learned that like Trav is a Daxamite, but his technomancy powers took the super strength from him. So he doesn't get to have the powers he should have had. He only has the technomancy powers, which makes him super jealous that Connor, like a Kryptonian, shows up and is like stomping around on his territory. And the way that he sees it, it's like this guy went through what I went through, but he's had life handed to him. Like he's automatically been branded a hero. Like he's part of this whole group that people love. He's one of these like Earth guys because Trev does his homework about him after they capture him. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like that this guy went through similar stuff that they did, but he got life served to him seemingly on a golden platter afterwards. So he thinks he's dead inside because this guy thinks, from Trav's point of view, this guy Connor thinks that he's got it all figured out. He knows the answers to everything. But when you really look at it, like he came out claiming he was trying to help people. But as you go through the story, Connor does want to help people, but he really wants to capture the feeling of like him being the way he was back when he was younger. He's like still in Arrested Development, which he's wrestling with. Trevor's like, this guy died like the day he was born. Like he will never grow up. He is never going to become a better person. And I believe issue 4. I gotta be careful because I don't want to reveal stuff that isn't revealed until 5. But yeah, he basically is like, I could do better. I could like the best aspects of this guy are his powers, and that's it. So I think that line really just means that like he doesn't think that anything inside Superboy is worth anything to him. It's only the muscle and the possibility of what they could do if they had that kind of power on their side all the time.
Now, with Trav and Superboy, they both are in their minds being superheroes, but not necessarily for the right reasons. Maybe if Superboy's doing it to kind of recapture what he was, and Trav's doing it in many ways from an idea of power because he's not necessarily using his powers correctly. What does that mean for this area of the universe where the two people playing heroes are not necessarily doing it for the most wholesome reasons?
Yeah, it's really just a devising path of like, what if when Connor woke up after being cloned and created, like he realized he was made to be a weapon and then immediately revolted and then went on a rebellious active warfare to destroy his creators. Like
Mm.
everything Trav is doing up to a point is justified of somebody being bred to be a weapon, fighting their way out, and then realizing it was happening to other people that he wasn't going to be able to stop it. Connor is just more proof that this is happening all over the universe. That
Mm.
like people are being abducted or they're being like bred for war. So it just Connor's existence also feeds more fuel to the fire of Trav's like campaign of like, I'm a freedom fighter who I will do whatever it takes in order to make sure that the power is in the right hands, my hands, which is what he thinks that it should be in his hands, and that nobody should be captured and controlled by the dominators or any other big force like that. And if I have to make a big mess of things and do some very questionable stuff in order to make sure that it never happens again, I'll do it this time to make sure it never happens again. I'll have one short brief period of horribleness to guarantee no kid ever has to go through that again. I will be the bad guy. And he's oddly very cool with it. He's like a very like kind of like a teenage Magneto on steroids. It's just like I feel righteous in what I'm doing, and nobody's gonna stop me.
So one thing that you mentioned as well is that they're being bred for war, and that's happening all over. Are they being bred? Are they're legitimately being bred for war? What war are we looking at in the future of our series then, if this is what they're all being made for?
In my mind, uh, and the reason that all these different races are buying them, like all these different alien races have encountered the Justice League or some form of metahumans, either from Earth or from other planets. And if you think about it, like way far in the future with the Legion of Superhero stuff, like there are people with powers that come from everywhere
Mm.
eventually, and it only gets bigger. Like out there in space, in my mind, there would be a metahuman arms race of
Mm.
like, we can't make a dent. Like we can make as many spaceships and stuff as we want, but one Green Lantern can take out a one skilled Green Lantern can take out an entire fleet.
Yeah.
So to me, there would be plenty of people who are like warlords or standing armies of planets who would do anything to buy uh, people with powers, like whether they're grown from the ground up. Of like, there could be people who submit their own people, or like Dominator X, throw in XYZ different genetics, like build us a better version of ourselves so we can have a genetically modified, meta
Mm.
insert whatever species they are. To me, it would just make sense from a building standpoint that like seeing that Earth is unintentionally stockpiling superpowered individuals, that other races and other groups in space would want to do the same.
So are we looking at that in the future of the series of Superboy, or is that something that we would like to see, or is that something that we're working towards?
That's something that I would love to explore more later on if given the opportunity. It's a little just like a seed I'm planting that I think would be a really interesting DC Universe story down the road of like what happens when the meta gene sort of thing becomes more exploitative at like a nuclear weapon type level of like an arms race sort of thing. So that's just something personally that I think is interesting.
I just because as you're talking about, I'm thinking to myself, that sounds like an event comic book in the future for some reason. Like, a few years down the road, you
Well,
never know.
you want to call DC and tell them you want that? I will gladly write it because I would love to. I would love to do that.
I think that'd be absolutely fascinating. If I had their phone numbers, I would totally be on the phone with
Yeah.
them. I have a great idea for you. So, what are we looking forward to for Superboy over the next, let's say, few months?
So for the last two issues of this series, you're going to see a lot of emotional stuff come to a head in 5, and then the fallout of it all. There's going to be some big surprises. I know it seems like I've probably thrown every surprise you could think of already. I'm really big about like let's do new like big ideas. Like I said, like I'm about expanding and adding to the toy box. I don't like to break stuff unless it's like absolutely necessary for the story. There's still some very big surprises to come in terms of things that are going to happen or things that are going to show up that I think people are going to get really excited about. And I think it's going to leave him in a great way to tee up. If you haven't gone and read Phillip Kennedy Johnson's stuff, it'll tee you up to a perfect spot to jump in at Action Comics 1051. I think it's one 1051. It might be 1052, but it'll give you a perfect moment to jump right in there and then continue reading with this in mind of like what Connor's gone through in order to become a part of this new Superman family and like grab the new duds and everything, get that sweet new jacket. Which Philip and I are still waiting for those jackets. Like they gotta like I feel like they at least owe us jackets.
Oh, that'd be pretty cool. You know, why wouldn't you? It's a perfect way to advertise your new series. So you're also working on another, as either the writer or co-writer of a upcoming Image comic called The Schlub. Is that what I'm saying? Schlub?
Yeah, the Schlub. Yep, I'm co-writing that with Ryan Stegman, who you know from Venom, the Superior Spider-Man. He just did Vanish with Donny Cates as part of this KLC Press imprint, which is the Schlub is a part of KLC Press as well. So I'm co-writing that with Ryan, and then Tyrell Cannon, who you might know from Beef Bros or Eris. He's doing the art. Mike Spicer, who's colored pretty much like all of the Daniel Warren Johnson books, like Do a Powerbomb, who just won an Eisner. He's coloring our book. He also colored DC Mech for me, which was awesome and looked amazing. So I'm glad Mike and I get to work together again there. And then John J. Hill is doing the lettering. And I'll give you the elevator pitch, and then I'll give you the whole vibe, like tonal pitch of it. The elevator pitch is the world's worst guy, who's this failing dentist named Roger Dalton, blames the whole world on his problems, never takes responsibility for anything, ends up switching bodies with the most powerful and most responsible superhero in the entire world. And things go very horribly wrong for us as he gets his second chance at life to right all the wrongs that he's gone through. If I had to give you a vibe on it, imagine if Michael Scott or Kenny Powers switch bodies with Superman, and how bad that would be for us. So that's kind of the vibe of it. And it's like a whole new universe. I didn't know we were going to do this much, but we just had so much fun with it. We've built out a whole like alternate world of like super heroics and different characters and stuff. So this series launches on August 23rd. And we already have pretty much all the issues done. Like we're working on 6 right now. So by the time issue number 1 hits stands, fans can rest assured like issue 6 will probably at that stage either be in inks or colors. Because Tyrell works super fast. And so this whole thing's going to be done. Like it's already pretty much like locked, and we'd love to do more. We already know what the ending is and how we continue it to go. So if fans want to see that, that'd be great. But yeah, you're going to follow Roger and this superhero Cirrus as they switch bodies of like how their lives are incredibly different, but then slowly realizing through their follies and stuff, like they have more in common than you'd think, and that's bad for everybody, especially in their home and family lives. So it's been great to write it. Like I love doing, like obviously if you read from Superboy, I love big action, big emotions. Those are the things that I love, like that I think superhero comics do so well. And we have a ton of that in there. And Tyrell is great at both. He's really great at action stuff and doing unique things. There's a part in issue 1 with a battle that like goes through a building that you get to see the cross section of, and then like Looney Tunes explode out of. That is absolutely amazing. And he does emotional stuff really well too. There are some scenes in the later issues of like some literal heartbreaking moments of Roger realizing that maybe his outlook on life isn't the best one, and seeing through another pair of eyes the repercussions of what he's done throughout his life. So I'm very proud of it. It's awesome to have an Image series. Like I've always wanted an Image comic series ever since I read Spawn, like back to bring it back full circle. As a kid, like I've always wanted to do that. So the fact that I'm going to do that also with a bunch of friends of mine, like Stegman and Tyrell and I are in a group that I talk to them every day. So it's just great that we were able to collaborate that way. And co-writing with Stegman has been awesome. This was a story that he had and was going to do originally by himself. He was going to write and draw himself, but then decided that he wanted to bring in a co-writer on it. And like, we're friends. Like I said, we talk every day. He asked me how I felt about it. I'd been a big champion of him making this book for a while, and I already known based on the outlines he submitted most of the story. So we kind of reworked it, and I brought my own flavor to a lot of it. And so our writing process has been flawless because he and I are buddies, and like, we're not afraid to be like, I don't like that, or like, maybe we should change this. And you know, we just have a really good time with it. And then like, we love Tyrell, and Tyrell brings his own story input into stuff. It does really cool. It does really cool things where he'll give us input of like, I think maybe we should stop and have a moment like this in the issue, or maybe we could explore this a little bit. And we're very loose with the scripting, so I usually work full script with a lot of people, but for this, we're doing it a bit more Marvel style, where there's a lot of beats for each page, but we don't break it down into panels or anything. And Tyrell has free carte blanche to add moments and stuff as he wants, or expand stuff, or maybe condense stuff down to like 2 pages into one, or blow 1 page out into a double page spread. As long as it fits within the page count that we got, like, we trust him as an artist and a storyteller.
So what kind of threats are they looking at combating? And what is, if Dalton is getting to be the superhero, what is life like for the superhero that's now stuck in his body?
Yeah, without spoiling too much of it, like, there is a whole world of superheroics and villains and stuff that we've built out that Roger is shoved into. At the same time, Cirrus is having to deal with all the fallouts of Roger and his business and his relationship with his family. So you get both of those sides, as well as, you know, like, maybe Cirrus also has some things going on with his family that he isn't talking about that they're going to have to do. So the bottom line is, like, Ryan loves body swap movies. So like, he was all about doing one and like doing different takes on the trope, like turning it in different directions. So at no point are we doing like that, well, I know it's going to be this part is what's going to happen next. Like, we always do what the character would do and ignore like what's come before. So because Roger is such a unique protagonist, don't expect the usual tropes of a body swap thing to happen, because Roger is going to make a lot of choices that are uniquely Roger and stuff. So that's the sort of thing you can expect, is like, when you expect somebody to zig or zag, Roger will go through the floor or through the ceiling.
So how what was what to go with Spider-Man? The great power comes great responsibility. With all this power that Roger now has, you know, he's capable of now, he obviously hasn't earned any of those powers. What is his view towards them?
So that's interesting, because it takes a while for him to develop a viewpoint on it, because they're being pursued this whole time by a villain. His name is Worm, who's very interested in swapping bodies and getting the same power. And Worm has a very interesting backstory and stuff we'll get into later. He's like kind of a necro sorcerer, so kind of on the other side of stuff. And so at first, like, Roger's like shoved into it, like, you switch bodies and we're in the middle of a fight. You need to win this fight. And he doesn't know how to control it and stuff. And the more he learns to control the body, the more he starts to, when he thinks he's feeling comfortable, the more we hit him with emotional stuff. So you'll really get to see him like, it's like somebody having to learn how to drive a car for the first time with no instructions, but somebody yelling through a Bluetooth of like, you just got to feel it, man, when you're in the middle of a highway with like cars coming at you going the wrong way. Like, that's kind of what it feels like for him a lot of the time. And as he learns how to use the powers and becomes more comfortable with it, that kind of emotionally leads more into him being reflective of what's going on and how he's treated people and what his relationships are, as he's able to see it from outside of himself. And the violence just gets bigger as the more that he learns how to control the body too.
So, because I mean, he gets a good deal in some level that he gets the superpowers. The one who is the hero also gets his body. How interested is Roger in actually switching back?
So it's an inconvenience at first, for sure, and because mainly like they're screwing up each other's lives by being switched. So it's imperative for them to switch also because it is in there from the get-go. Like there's a time limit. Like they have a time limit to switch. So if they don't switch back, it's going to be permanent. And so like neither of them want to mess up each other's lives. And we do get into the question of them like, am I better off as this person? Am I better off as that person? But a lot of it, like Roger's a piece of shit, but he's not evil. like like he's not a bad guy. So like he knows that Sirius is trying to do the right thing and stuff, just like Roger does things his way and everything, and that'll play a lot into it. So without spoiling a ton about it, like we will see their like dynamic of arguing and stuff back and forth and discovering what life is like as each other a lot. But a lot of it is about understanding, and then a lot of it is about like things not being what they seem in terms of like how people relate to their worlds and stuff.
Now, I know you said it's a 6-issue series, but with all that world building, is it too early to discuss whether or not this would enter other series or larger universes or things of that nature?
We already know what would happen in volume 2. So we have that sketched out. And then there's a group of characters who I won't give away who they were going to be throwaway characters, but we ended up liking them so much they became main cast members, and they would have the potential to like I would personally love to spin them off into their own book. And you'll meet them, I believe, by issue 2, and you'll know exactly who they are when you meet them because they make a big impression. And you'll see them continue throughout the series. But yeah, they're like in terms of like the possibilities, like it's like Invincible of like we accidentally created like a whole alternate universe and we would totally take it off and like we could do more stuff with the different heroes. We could do more stuff with the different villains we created. There can be more about just like the normal sort of people that live in this world, similar to like Astro City and stuff. So yeah, we have a bunch of ideas of stuff we couldn't fit in to the first volume that we could spin off and continue on. So if fans are into it and fans buy it and stuff, we'll keep it going for the long haul, buddy. Like we got a lot planned out.
Well, Ms. Burtis, it's absolutely awesome. And when it comes out for a few issues, hopefully you come back so we can talk about it in detail.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, we could do like a little recap of like the first 3 or 4 or something and talk about like where the story is kind of at this point. Definitely dive into those fun extra characters that got introduced and stuff because I think you're going to like them a lot. Yeah, I would love to do that. That'd be great.
That'd be awesome. Thank you so much, sir. Have a fantastic night.
You too, man. Have a good one.